Good morning, good afternoon, and welcome to this webinar, Step by Step, the Higg FEM verification trail. And now we have come to the section 5, the wastewater section. So it's our fourth webinar in this series. It's great to have you on board, and I'm happy that we will be spending 1 hour together. Let me just please show you the control panel. What is important today is that you know that we are all on mute. So that we can ensure the best audio quality. And please feel free to send us your questions. You can do that throughout the webinar, and we will have time towards the end of the webinar to take those questions. And the questions that we cannot respond to live, we will respond to in a written format after this webinar. And my name is Karin Ekberg. I think many of you already know me. I'm the CEO of Leadership and Sustainability, and we are a small consulting and auditing company. We work globally. We have now already quite a large team working on both Higg FEM and SSCP, on Higg BRM, and many other tools and services. And let me take you to the agenda. But first, let me also say that this is copyrighted material. The agenda for today is we will speak very briefly about the verification trail and the purpose of the verification trail. For those of you who have already joined our previous webinars, you will know that you will already have heard this information, so it is not new. It's not new for you. And then we will go through the wastewater section. And we have a small demo for you as well, and then we will cover any questions you may have. And we will also talk a bit about the services that we have. So with that, let me continue. The verification trail and its purpose. So the purpose is really to give you the opportunity to gain a better understanding of the Higg Index, a deeper understanding, and also what it means for your company. We guide you through all the processes, all the questions, and we want also to make sure that you understand the requirements that are there related to every question and how to respond to them, and thereby also helping you to improve your performance, because what this is all about is really about improving the environmental performance, reducing your environmental footprint. And then, of course, in this process also to prepare you for the verification. And very briefly, the steps to get to a verified module: you complete your self-assessment, you select a verifier who then makes a proposal to you. You make your self-assessment available to the verifier via the VFEM. So if you want to have the verification done, you need both a FEM and a VFEM. So you need both modules. The verify review document send information about any issues beforehand, send the agenda ahead of the verification, and then you have the on-site or the off-site verification. This year, as well as last year, off-site verification will be allowed. You can do off-site verification, and it's still accepted for as a formal verification. The only other thing is that you will not be able to communicate via the communication toolkit of your results if you have an off-site verification. And then you will be reporting your results on the higg.org. And there is a lot of guidance available, as you know, on the How to Higg website, both about the on-site verification process and the process about the off-site verification. And here we see the overview of all the sections. You are already well familiar with all those sections. And so let's kick off the wastewater section. And as in so many other sections, you will have several applicability questions. And here, please make sure that you respond correctly. It is very important here because there is a significant set of combined questions that you will receive depending on your responses related to the applicability. So does your facility generate industrial wastewater? I guess that most facilities, all facilities should have domestic wastewater. And Higg FEM also assumes that you have domestic wastewater. But then the question is, do you generate industrial wastewater? Does your facility have zero liquid discharge? We will explain later what zero liquid discharge is, but it is basically a recycling of all water. So this means really you have no water that is discharged from your facility after your processes. And then the next question is, do you treat industrial and domestic wastewater together? Yes or no? And where is your wastewater treated? And here you can see an overview of a wastewater treatment process. So you can see the wastewater entering the plant here, and it can be entering either as wastewater. It can also enter as a stormwater if you have a permit where you need to treat your stormwater. In some cases, stormwater can be discharged directly, but that depends on your specific permit, so on the local regulation. And then you have an equalization tank here. You have a primary sedimentation, you have the biological process, and then you can see also that you have sludge produced, and that sludge is also taken care of. And if we talk a bit more about the wastewater treatment process. So first of all, you have the wastewater. It's collected via drainage pipes and directed to a central point. The pipes or tracks should be leak-proof, and the people offering exhaust services should use PPE. And then we have the screening. This process involves the removal of large objects that could damage the equipment. These items must be disposed of correctly. So these might be meshes, large meshes, where any debris, any larger objects can be removed. And then you have the primary treatment. And during the primary treatment, macrobiotic solid matter is separated from the wastewater. And this process includes also sedimentation, equalization, neutralization, chemical coagulation, and mechanical flocculation. So one or more of those different processes. And after primary treatment comes secondary treatment. And here seed sludge is added to wastewater to ensure the degradation of any organic components. So this is the biological treatment step that you have. And this is done under aerobic conditions with the help of bacteria and microorganisms that consume organic matter. The process takes 3 to 6, perhaps even longer, hours, and results in the production of large particles that settle as sludge as to the bottom of the tank. And in addition to the application of activated sludge, the following steps can be included during the secondary treatment. Aerated lagoons, as you can see here, for example, biofilm, trickling filtration, oxidation ditches, etc. And then we have the sludge handling. This step is also very important, especially if you have an industrial wastewater treatment plant. In most cases, your sludge will then be a hazardous waste. And the sludge that precipitates during the secondary treatment is removed at regular intervals and dewatered in a filter press. The filter cake is disposed of most probably as hazardous waste, and the filtrate water is then fed back into the wastewater treatment plant. It may be that you have another process than a filter press. There are other ways of decompressing the sludge, or of compressing the sludge, sorry. And then we have the tertiary treatment. And this is maybe similar to how drinking water plants function. The tertiary treatment stage can remove up to 99% of impurities using some of the following techniques: oxidation, electrolytic precipitation, foam fractionation, membrane technologies, for example, ultrafiltration, reversed osmosis, ionic exchange, adsorption, thermal evaporation. So this is, of course, depending on the components that you have in your wastewater and what you then will have in that treated wastewater after the secondary treatment and the sludge removal. And then finally, you may even have a disinfection step, that may be a step that you have. It depends also on where you will discharge your wastewater and of course, on the respective permit that you have. And there is an excellent document available on the ZDHC, the Zero Discharge of Hazardous Chemicals, on their website. And it explains in a lot of detail all the different wastewater treatment processes that you can find in the textile sector. So those were the applicabilities. And now let me give you an overview of the different levels in the wastewater section. And so you can see, as compared to the water section where you have only one question at level 1, here we have a lot of questions at level 1, and some of them may be a bit challenging. So for the wastewater section, sometimes it may even be more challenging to be able to move from level 1 to levels 2 and 3. And as you remember, and those of you who have already been working with Higg FEM, you have already seen that you always need to respond to the level 1 questions with yes or partial yes, and only then can you move on to levels 2 and 3. And here you see now level 1 is about tracking wastewater volume, the wastewater treatment, hazardous sludge disposal, and then at level 2, we are talking about wastewater standards and offsite wastewater quality tests. And finally, at level 3, we have one question about wastewater reuse and recycling. So that's the overview of the different questions in the wastewater section. And now let's go to the first question. The first question is actually quite simple: tracking wastewater volume. Does your facility track its wastewater volume? And then you should indicate the total quantity of wastewater discharged, the tracking method, the frequency of the measurement, and the quantity of the discharge points, labeling, and monitoring. And as you can see, those three last questions here, or sub-questions, they are new to the Higg FEM 2020. And for those of you who are new to our webinar series, just to let you know that whenever we have something that is new in the Higg FEM 2020, then we have marked it up accordingly with a green box. And we have also a lot of additional guidance, and especially related to data quality and data reporting. We have received a lot of additional guidance from SAC. And here we go. This is still regarding the question 1. When you report your wastewater data in the FEM, you should review the source data against aggregated totals to ensure that it is accurate. Compare the current year with the historical data. Ensure the most recent and updated versions of data tracking spreadsheets are being used. Ensure the proper units are reported and verify any unit conversions from source data. And the unit conversions, for those of you who have tried that out, it may be a bit complicated to get it right, but please spend enough time to make sure that you have the correct formulas and that you do the calculations correctly. Report the data source and frequency of measurement, and also report the final discharge point. So a lot of additional guidance that is really important in relation to the data reporting. And then what should you not do? You should not report data that is not accurate. So if the data source is unknown or has not been verified, you should really be sure that this number is accurate. And you are allowed to estimate data, but it should be supported by verifiable and reasonable accurate estimation methodologies and data. And then there is one new added unscored question to this question number 1. And that question is, does your facility have a mechanism to prevent wastewater from mixing with stormwater in the storm drain systems? And why do we have this question here? Well, it is really important that you ensure that your storm drain systems, if they, for example, are discharged directly from the factory and are not treated in your wastewater treatment plan, then you should really make sure that you don't have any leakages of wastewater, of untreated wastewater into those systems, because obviously then you would pollute the storm drain systems, and also when you are discharging, you would accordingly discharge untreated wastewater. So that is really, really important. And of course, also, if you would have wastewater coming into your storm drain systems, you may have leakages at other points as well. Perhaps wastewater is leaking into the underground and into the groundwater. And that is, of course, a very, very serious issue. Soil and groundwater contamination cannot be underestimated, and the risk of it when you have, especially when you have wet processes, or you are using a lot of chemicals, or are using a lot of oil, you need to make sure that you don't have any leakages anywhere into the soil and into the groundwater. Okay, then the question number 2, and this is about having the details about the offsite wastewater treatment. So the question is, do you have the name and contact information of the offsite wastewater treatment plant? And here, SAC has decided to go a bit further than what probably most factories would do in general. Here, they really want you to understand if the offsite wastewater treatment plant, if they are treating the wastewater in the way that they should. And so you should have the name, address, ownership, and you should also have a copy of the contract with the wastewater treatment plant, if available. So sometimes you have a direct contract with them if they are treating your wastewater. Sometimes it may also be part of your permit or part of the local infrastructure, so there may not always be a direct contract. But in some cases, you have a contract that you can then also upload to this question. And if you don't have a specific contract, you should just explain the local infrastructure that you have, and that in this case that you don't have a specific contract with your wastewater treatment plant. And we also suggest that you upload, when available, the signed contract with the wastewater treatment plant, and then of course any permit that you have that shows that you are allowed to discharge into the offsite wastewater treatment plant. Then question number 3 is also a really important question. Does your facility have a backup plan if there is an emergency situation related to wastewater? So if you would have, for example, if you would have a leakage of chemicals into your wastewater drainage or into your wastewater pipes, then you may need to basically shut off the plant. You may need to take care of significant volumes of polluted wastewater that has much higher concentrations of pollutants than what you usually would take care of. And so, you know, your wastewater treatment plant is designed to take care of your regular load of pollutants into the wastewater. But if you have a leak of chemicals into that wastewater stream, then the concentrations of the pollutants will be much higher than what you generally have. And then your wastewater treatment plant may not be able to treat this wastewater accordingly. It may even, in some cases, kill the bacteria you have in your biological step. So the intention is that you have a backup plan and installations to be able to take care of the wastewater if you cannot discharge it into your normal canalization. And what you need here is, for example, so you should indicate what type of backup plan you have. You may have an emergency production shutdown that you just have to shut down the plant or at least your wet processes, a holding tank. And a holding tank is very common anyway that you have at the inlet of your wastewater treatment plant. Then we are asking also what is the size of your facility's holding tank, and it should be 1 day of the total wastewater volume that you have. And then do you have secondary treatment? What type of treatment do you have? Do you have the possibility to discharge to the offsite wastewater treatment plant? Then, and this is also a new for 2020, you should have a training for employees, and you may also have some other backup process available. And suggested upload here is the documented emergency backup process sufficient to treat the average daily amount of wastewater discharged. And there is also one new unscored question. Can you confirm that there is no leaking or bypassing of wastewater? So again, we have this question about leaking or bypassing of wastewater, a bit different than the first question where we were asking if you had leakage into the stormwater drainage. But here you just have to make sure that you have no wastewater leakages anywhere in your factory. Okay, and then the hazardous sludge disposal. So the question is your hazardous sludge disposed of properly? Do you have hazardous waste treatment, incineration under controlled conditions? Is it landfilled, which is not a very good disposal method actually for hazardous waste of any kind? Do you have open burning? And I'd hope you don't have open burning. Fuel blended might be a possibility. For example, blend it into the cement industry or in other industries where the ovens have a very high temperature and therefore can also destroy the hazardous components. Composted, also not a good idea for hazardous sludge. Fertilizer applied to land as well, not a good idea for hazardous waste. And then also the suggested uploads are the permits or manifest for proper disposal or land application. And regarding the hazardous sludge disposal, there is some additional information as well. The training, there you should indicate which training topic you have, the number of employees trained, and the frequency of trainings. And then there is also, if you need to find out if your sludge from the wastewater treatment is hazardous or not, then there are lead sheets that you can be doing to understand which pollutants you have in your sludge. And there are also the disposal methods, for example, the sludge treatment, energy recovery, and as we saw previously, also there are other disposal methods. And what is really important, and I often get this question, and that is, in most countries, the sludge from an industrial wastewater treatment plant is classified as hazardous. But there are actually a few countries where this sludge is classified as non-hazardous, and then you need to follow your local regulation. So if there is no other infrastructure for you locally to take care of the sludge, and because it is classified as non-hazardous in your country, then you need to see what other options you may have. But you should in any case follow local regulations here. And then when we come to the non-hazardous sludge disposal, is non-hazardous sludge disposed of properly under incinerated controlled conditions, landfilled, open burning, fuel blended, composted, fertilizer. So the same options that you have in the regarding hazardous sludge we have here. And the suggested upload, the sludge analysis or test results, permits or manifests for proper disposal or land application if that is applicable to you. And then the training topic, number of employees trained, and the frequency of trainings. And you see this also throughout all sections in the Higg FEM, that training has been given more focus now in 2020. All right, and then for those of you who have domestic water treatment or domestic wastewater that is treated with a septic water treatment, and the question is, does your facility treat the wastewater using septic before it is discharged? Does your facility provide training to all relevant employees regarding the disposal method of the septic waste? How does your site unload your septic tank once full? And do you have a plan to upgrade your septic tank to a more modern wastewater treatment approach? And this question, the last question here, is there because if we look at let me see, this is on the next slide, I have more information about the actual treatment of the septic water. And the suggested upload, take that first. The documentation that your facility treats septic wastewater before it is discharged. A plan to upgrade your septic tank to a more modern wastewater treatment approach. Training topic, number of employees trained, and the frequency of training. So you remember this content we had previously as well. And now I wanted to mention also the septic water treatment and the treatment levels that we get here. So of course the septic wastewater needs to be treated and disposed of properly to avoid contaminating the environment. So even if it's only domestic wastewater, it still needs to be treated. And the treatment capacity that we have on average is 40% BOD, so biological oxygen demand, is being reduced by 40% in the septic tank treatment. Then around 70% of the total solids and around 77% of fats, oil, and grease are destroyed in the plant. But those are not very, very high levels, and this is the reason why SAC is asking for better treatment. Okay, and now we have, this was the level 1 still, and now if we are able to respond with a yes or a partial yes to all those questions, then we are able to move on to level 2. And here we have the questions about the wastewater standards. So this question is your facility reporting against the wastewater standard? And here you should not mention the local regulations or the local standards that you have, but any additional standard that you have. And here you have the ZTHC wastewater guideline, the BSR, the Business for Social Responsibility, the IPE, the Chinese NGO website, customer or brand specific standards that you may be reporting to, and then any other. And have you tested and met all parameters specified in the standard? And then here you can have a multi-select on reporting wastewater standards. So actually, and this is also new since last year, because previously you didn't have also the local legislation here as an alternative. And then it was unclear if you should say yes, even if you had only the local legislation. And in this case, you can select the local legislation, but you should also have other wastewater guidelines that you are reporting to, or at least we want to know if you have additional ones that you are reporting to. And so you can have multi-select on those standards. And there is also a table updated that has been updated to include the frequency of sampling. And there is also a new table on the ZTHC table to report on. Are you reporting against this standard? Have you tested and met all parameters specified in this standard? And are your parameter results available on the standards platform? So those are then follow-up questions if you respond yes to the previous question. And the different standards that you have, as I mentioned, you may have the local legislation, you may also have the ZTHC, the MRSL, and the sorry, this is this should be the ZTHC wastewater standard. So the ZTHC wastewater standard, which describes where you which sample points you need to use for your direct discharge, indirect discharge, for seal liquid discharge as well. And then there are 2 sampling deadlines. So generally ZTHC wastewater standard requests that you take samples actually twice a year. And so that is an important question. And now let's move on to the question number 8. This is about the off-site wastewater quality test. So this question you will get if you actually are treating your wastewater in an off-site wastewater treatment plant. And the question is, previously you had the question if you have the contact details, and this question is about, have you requested wastewater quality test results from the off-site wastewater treatment plant? And the suggested upload is the documentation of your request to off-site wastewater treatment plant and the quality records if they are provided. So in this question, the very least you must do is to request the test results from the off-site wastewater treatment plant. And then you get full score. If they respond to you, that's great, and then you should upload that corresponding document. But you don't get penalized if you don't get a response from the off-site wastewater treatment plant, because SAC is aware that not all off-site wastewater treatment plants may give that information or may publish that information, and you should not be punished because of that. And then the quality test off-site, you request the results, you have the quality records. You may also do a site visit. That is not a bad idea at all to do a site visit. Then you can learn a lot about the wastewater treatment technology that they are using. But you can also, of course, understand if that treatment is being done also correctly. And then the last question, and this is now level 3, the wastewater reuse and recycling question. Does your facility reuse and or recycle process wastewater as process water in a closed loop? And the suggested upload is records demonstrating your closed loop recycling, list of water reduction achievements according to the location where water is captured for recycling or the location where recycling water is used. And then there is a note here on scoring, because you actually need to have a certain amount of your water recycled in order to get full points. You get full points only if you reuse or recycle 80% or more of your process wastewater. And also, please see here the writing. Does your facility reuse and or recycle process wastewater as process water? So it is not counted if you are reusing your process wastewater as irrigation water, for example. It needs to be going into that closed loop of your process water system. And so if you have 80% or more, you get full points. If you are reusing recycling 50 to 79%, then you get partial points. And if you recycle or reuse less than 49%, then you get 0 points. And if you don't know, then of course it's also 0 points. And you can see here also the scoring with the 80% or more for full points on 50 to 79 for partial points. This is exactly the same scoring approach as we have in the energy, water and waste section related to defining your baseline and setting your targets. So these are actually one-to-one the same scoring approach here. All right, so now I wanted to also to give you some information about the zero liquid discharge approach. So it is an advanced wastewater treatment method. So you can imagine after you have had your secondary treatment and you can go then into your tertiary treatment, where you actually have to treat your water even more in order to be able to reuse the water in your processes. you may have certain, if you would be discharging your wastewater into the environment or into an external plant, then you have certain requirements on the quality of that wastewater, and obviously they are quite strict. But if you need to or want to recycle your water and use it again in your processes, then you usually need an even better quality. So, and that's why you need to have additional installations in order to treat your treated wastewater even one step further. And those are, for example, they may be a combination of several different treatment steps. It may be only one. It really depends on the quality of your already treated wastewater and the quality requirements that you have on your process water. So it may include ultrafiltration. It may include reversed osmosis. So, for example, if you have a lot of dissolved salts in your wastewater, then you might need a reversed osmosis as well. Even evaporation crystallization may be one step in order to further evaporate and crystallize the sludge that comes. So the amount of sludge that you will be producing in those steps, it's smaller than the amount of sludge that you produce in the biological treatment step, but you still have some sludge. And so it's a very, zero liquid discharge is a very advanced process. And also, again, to remember, even if the sludge that you have here in this step is a smaller volume, it may still be a hazardous sludge, and it may still be difficult to dispose of this sludge. And if, for example, if you need to evaporate or crystallize, the energy consumption that you will have is very, very high. So you can reduce the sludge volume very much with filter presses, etc., etc. But when you really need to make it into a solid, then and a dry solid, then the energy demand is very, very high. So for evaporation, you will be using so much more energy. So therefore, also it's not only always technically feasible or even economically feasible to take this final step. And but there are also some, of course, some objectives with doing this. There are a lot of benefits. You eliminate the liquid wastewater discharge. Totally, you have no wastewater, no liquid coming out of the factory. You generate solids for landfill disposal or reuse, and you recycle also high quality water that can be beneficially used. So if you remember when we had the water section 2 days ago, we were speaking about water scarcity and how water scarcity is becoming a more and more difficult problem for us as the years go. So for every year, it is getting more and more stressed. So the water scarcity is getting more accentuated. And that, of course, means also that if you can recycle your water, it's really a very good approach, and is very good for the environment. And obviously also, this is the only question at level 3. So if you want to score 100 points in the wastewater section, you actually need to get those 25 points here as well. And I have a very simple illustration here for you, what it can look like with wastewater recycling. And here you also see some of the steps that you may be using in this step. So you may have the membrane treatment I was talking about with ultrafiltration, reversed osmosis, and then you may have your crystallizer here, for example, an evaporator and then a crystallizer. All right, so this was everything I wanted to talk about related to the wastewater section. But let me go now and show you the online portal. And so here we are in the wastewater section. And as I said, there are lots of applicability questions. So, for example, does your facility generate industrial wastewater? Do you have zero liquid discharge? Do you treat industrial and domestic wastewater together? Where is your domestic wastewater treated? In this case, I selected sent to a septic system. And where is your industrial wastewater treated? Treated on site only. And then we have the question, does your facility track its wastewater volume? If I say yes here, then I get this table here, and it is already populated with both industrial wastewater and, and domestic wastewater. And then you get the specific question related to industrial wastewater and domestic wastewater respectively. Do I track it's my wastewater volume? What was the total quantity? How was it tracked? How often do I do it? And then these are then the new questions here. How many wastewater discharge points do you have? Have you labeled them? Do you monitor all identified wastewater discharge points? What was the final discharge point for your facility's wastewater? And we can see here, for example, it may be an off-site wastewater treatment plant, septic or lagoon, environment land, environment water, recycled or reused in the facility. And then you can also provide any additional comments that you may have. And remember this question as well, does your facility have a mechanism to prevent wastewater from mixing with stormwater in the storm drain system? And as usual, if I say no here, then it's just a no. If I say yes, I get a follow-up question. Please upload the documentation. And then it goes on and on here. Does your facility have a backup plan if there is an emergency situation related to wastewater? And I just wanted to see here if we can go to the last question and see which follow-up questions that we get here. So now for the last question, the only question at level 3, does your facility reuse and or recycle process wastewater? If I say no, I'm finished. If I say yes, then I am asked the question here, enter the percentage of wastewater treated and recycled back into your production processes. So in this case, if I have more than 80%, then I will get full score. If I have 50 to 79%, I will get partial score, which is 50% of the total score. And then I should also describe here. And please take the time to describe your processes well. Always do that with all questions. Please describe whenever you have the opportunity to do so. And please also upload as many documents as you can. Do not upload any confidential information into the portal, because when you share your modules with the verifiers or with other partners, then they will also be able to see the documents that you have uploaded. So confidential documentation do not belong here online. But of course, there is a lot of documentation you can upload that will not be confidential. So please upload as much as possible, explain as much as possible, and that will help you year by year when you are rolling forward. For the next year, you will remember which comments you have and why you have responded yes or no. And of course, also during the verification, it's a very significant help if you have prepared your self-assessment accordingly. And I have mentioned this before, but please remember that once you send your self-assessment to the verifier, you cannot do any changes anymore. There are no changes you can make. Only the verifier can make all changes. And the verifier can change anything. So if you have a number incorrect or if a response was incorrect, the verifier can change that. But of course, the idea is that your responses should be as accurate as possible so that there are not a lot of things that need to be changed during the verification. All right, so that was the demo, and let me go back to the presentation here. And now I will open up for questions, and I can see here that we have already received questions. Okay, if we do not have a flow meter at the effluent discharge, can we use an estimated approach such as input is equal to output? Yes, you can do that. Of course, you need to make sure that you don't have any leakages anywhere. And also, for example, if you would have processes where you have a lot of evaporation, there you would be losing water. But in general, you can make that estimation. So remember also regarding the quality guidance, the guidance on data quality, you should be able to explain why you have responded in a certain way. What would be the holding tank capacity for emergency plan? Yes, you need to have a backup plan that makes it possible for you to treat 1 day of your wastewater. Where can I find the ZTHC guidelines? You can find it on the ZTHC website, or you Google ZTHC wastewater guidelines, and you will find them immediately. But I will add it also into our the written document with the question and answers. Can you please elaborate on closed loop? Yes, a closed loop is exactly what it says it is. It is a manner of closing the water circle. So that is when you can recycle everything, all of your wastewater, into your process water, then you have closed the loop. An open loop would be if you have wastewater that is still being discharged. Question, what is ZTHC? ZTHC is the Zero Discharge of Hazardous Chemicals Program. That is an NGO that has been operating now for around 10 years. And if you Google ZTHC, you will find their website and a lot of information there. But I will also add that link to you. They have a lot of valuable information about wastewater treatment technologies, about MRSL, the Manufacturing Restricted Substances List, and many brands are actually using the ZTHC MRSL list. There are also information about the wastewater guidelines, wastewater treatment technologies, and there is also a chemical management system framework that is really, really helpful. So there is a wealth of information available on the ZTHC website. As per How to Higg, what is the best disposal procedure for sludge beyond local regulation? Yes, the very best would be if it's possible to recycle the sludge. So if it is possible to recycle all the components of the sludge, but this is a technology more in the future, I would say. In some cases, it is possible, depending on the components of the sludge, to recycle, for example, metals that you can then reuse in chemicals. And otherwise, if you cannot do that, in my view, incineration in in an incinerator for toxic waste is the best. And that incineration needs to be at very, very high temperatures. Usually we are talking about temperatures of 1200 degrees Celsius in order to incinerate toxic sludge or other toxic or other hazardous waste components. Okay, ZTHC will influence the score of my wastewater model and my chemical module. Right. Yes, correct. So in this case, there was the question if you have tested according, for example, the ZTHC wastewater guidelines, and in the chemicals module, and we will speak about the chemicals module next week, I believe on Thursday. And there are lots of questions about MRSL, for example, and if you are using ZTHC, then you can respond correspondingly to those questions. And we will go through that in all detail also next week. Yes, we will be sending this presentation. All of you who have registered will receive this presentation, but also the recording after the webinar and the Q&A. The questions that we are not responding to live, I will respond to in a documented form. We have a very large audience today, and therefore it will not be possible to go through all questions. Is it required to do testing on the domestic sludge? It may be. This depends on your local regulation. So Higg FEM does not require testing from their point of view, but it may be that your local regulation and your permit requires you to do that. So you need to inform yourself in your permit and also, of course, in your according to your local regulation. Is there any separate training required for filling self-assessment questionnaire? No, it's not. Nothing is required. You can go ahead and just complete the self-assessment. You can listen to those webinars. You can also get in touch with us if you would like to have additional trainings or additional support in completing your self-assessment. Okay, to repeat for the question number 9 about recycling, which percentage of water reuse do we need to have in order to get full point? You need to have at least 80%. Okay, good, great. So now we have a few more minutes, and I want to also to give you some more information about our company and our services. And let me go here. Here you can see all the services that we are providing. So you can see we work a lot also with brands and retailers and helping them to develop their materiality assessment over the entire value chain for all sustainability aspects to develop their long-term sustainability strategies. We also work with manufacturers to develop their long-term strategies. Then we support companies to report on their sustainability matters as well, sometimes according to the GRI, the Global Reporting Initiative. We work on consulting related to better, more sustainable materials and products. Then we work a lot in the supply chain, as you already know, with the Higg FEM, SLCP, etc. We also conduct workshops and training. And here is some information about how to contact us. There is a booking page where you can set up a time to speak with me. You can also contact us via emails, and you see some of our contacts here on this slide. And then we also are ZTHC accredited training provider. And here you see the entire list of all the different webinars that we are holding. We have already held 4 webinars, with this one today. And next week, we will have the air emission section, the waste section, and also the chemical management section on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday next week. And you are really welcome to join us on those webinars. And here is the final slide with our team members, and not all team members are on this slide. We are actually growing day by day, and we have a really great team. And I want also to take this opportunity to thank all the team members who have contributed to developing all these materials that we are showing to you in those webinars. So we have had several team members supporting us here. Laura, Aladdin, Mutakabir, Janne, Julian, Sophia, and several others as well. So thanks a lot for all the support that you are giving. And I wish you all a great rest of your day. Stay safe and stay healthy. And I say goodbye here. Thanks a lot for joining us. Goodbye.